All right, we are now live here. My name is Matthew Coast, and I am here with Helena Hart. Say hello. Say hello. Don't say hello. Say hello or hi. One of that
Hi,
word.
everybody. Are you sure we're live? It still says off air.
Yeah, we're live. We're live.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so um, yeah. So today we're gonna be talking about the 8 things that make men lose interest. So this is a hot topic that a lot of women come and ask me about. They're like, "And what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong here? He's pulling away. Was it something I'm doing? And so we're gonna talk about 8 possible things that you might be doing that might be kind of making him lose interest and potentially pulling away or just like completely losing interest altogether. So, some of these things will do that, and I just want to throw a little caveat out there real quick where you might not know that you're doing some of these things, and that's okay. I don't think that any of these things that you can do. In fact, I don't think anything by itself that you can do if a guy really likes you. I mean, maybe like in the first initial dating stages, if you if you do some of these things, they might be red flags for him, and he might want to run. But if you're in a relationship or you got a guy that's really interested in you, and you do some of these things, he probably like just initially, if you're doing them, it won't. It might be kind of a turn off or unattractive for him. But usually, what makes it like what really makes him lose interest is kind of the long term game here of him. Of this kind of impacting him or being unattractive or being a turn off long term. Yeah, without further ado, do you have anything to say, Helena?
No, no, I was just sharing this to my Facebook page so
Oh,
people can
you're
start joining. Yeah.
you're
I
sharing it
didn't
to the
ask you.
Facebook
Yeah, I
page.
just did it. So,
We
yes.
should, man. We should. I always forget to do that.
Do you want me to share it to the group too?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
If you
goddess
want to share it
community?
to our
Okay.
group, go ahead. Hey, if you're new to our channel, make sure that you go and hit the subscribe button. It's down on the bottom right hand side, I believe, of here. It's somewhere on the page. There's there's definitely a subscribe button that you can hit if you want to get more videos on how to have the relationship that you want, how to attract the man that you want, and how to create the love that you want in your life. So that's that. Yeah. So what makes a man lose interest? Let's talk about a few things that are kind of giant turnoffs for guys. One of the big things. So the first one that I've got here is talking about your ex, right? And there's a lot of people do this a lot when they're dating, and it's to a guy, actually to anybody, to a guy
Mhm.
or a woman, if you're talking about your ex, really what you're telling the person that you're seeing is that you're still emotionally connected to your ex, right? Like, so you're still potentially in love with your ex. Obviously there's special circumstances like, um, you have kids with an ex, or there's an ex that's still in your life, or maybe your ex is a stalker or something. Um, but outside of that, you really shouldn't be talking much about your ex, because it's just like, man, it just feels weird and gross. Um,
Yeah, like if you're on a date with a guy and they start talking about your ex and it just makes you want to like put them in the friend zone immediately and you don't see them in a romantic way anymore. I'm assuming it's like that for guys as well. So, yeah, big turn off for men and women, I think.
Absolutely. And if you're new, wow, we've got a lot of people on
We
our
do.
watching this right now.
Really?
If you're just coming in, make sure that you say hi in the comments section. Leave a like, um, and we love chatting with people. We love talking with people. These live streams are really for the people that love being interacting with us on our channel and talking to us and hanging out with us. And so if you're here hanging out, and make sure that you say hi. Um, yeah, okay. So was there anything else you wanted to say about that, Helena?
No, just that it's really unattractive both ways for men and women. Think about it when a guy does that to you, how you feel, and it's just like, oh, it's just such a turn off, So it's I'm assuming that it's similar for men as well.
Absolutely, it's similar. It's absolutely similar for men, and there's even kind of this thing where it's like when you're on a date and a woman starts talking about her ex, it's almost like this, like, like I can't even, like, it's not even necessarily describable in like terms of words, but it's almost just like this sinking, like if I'm like if I'm a guy and I'm listening to it, it's kind of like this sinking feeling, like because it's kind of this indication um that you're not going, like, especially if you're talking crap about your ex, it's kind of this indication that you're not fully engaged, or you're not fully available to be in this relationship. So all right, let's talk about number two, the second thing that is really, really that makes men lose interest and is really, really unattractive, and that is pretending to be someone that you're not. So, if you're a comedian or you're an actress or something, that's a great time to pretend like you're someone you're not. But if you're not, then you shouldn't be pretending like you're someone you're not. And this happens sometimes unintentionally, right? So, like, if you end up meeting a guy and you're like really attracted to him and you really want him to like you, and guys do this as well. There's kind of this tendency to try to pretend like you're everything that he wants so that he'll like you more, and be, and so that you'll be the person that he wants you to be. If you want to really attract a man and you want him to feel like you're like the one, or that just this amazing woman that he's met, and you're just this really special woman to him, there's much better ways to connect with him in that way, to make him feel like you're amazing, than trying to be a doormat or trying to just like be like a yes woman. The term's yes man, but I guess yes woman. There's much better ways. One is really connecting with your heart, which Helena's really, really great at. There's also ways to talk to him that make him feel like you're an amazing, special woman. But pretending like you're someone you're not is not one of those things. Like pretending like, your life is more interesting than it is. What ends up happening when you do this is that eventually it comes out, right? The reality comes out. If a guy's into you, he's gonna be into you, and if you like, and you're not gonna need to kind of make up a bunch of stuff in order to make him, feel like you're more interesting. He's gonna genuinely and authentically be interested in what it is, what your life is really like, right? And the more you kind of sidestep that and try to pretend like you are someone you're not, or your life is like someone that it's not, or something that it's not, the more of a disconnect happens, right? And so it's like this erosion of trust. It, Helena?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I have so much to say about that. This headphone's driving me nuts. Can you hear me okay, or is it
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just
I
not
can hear
used
you.
to
Okay.
it. Okay. We like got in this little argument right before we went live over the sound. But yeah, I What?
It's less of an argument, more of like so you notice that I have these things on my head when I did the interview with Allison Armstrong, she's like it looks like you're about to go land a plane or something, and I'm like yeah, it's funny whenever I do interviews and with other people, I tend to want us both to have some kind of thing like this because if it doesn't, there's like this big echo that happens, and if you're on our last live stream you probably heard that echo that happened between
Yeah.
us, and it was really, really bad. I mean, just horrible, horrible bad. And so Helena's trying to get used to having
It's
this
I don't like
headphone in.
hearing myself. It's just really distracting. But if you can hear me okay, then that's great. Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you're saying. Like I remember I used to go on dates maybe like 10 years ago, practically like rehearsing my lines. Like I thought, okay, well, I need to show this guy that I'm like really easygoing and sweet and really like intelligent, and it's just not what makes a man feel attracted to you. And I love what you said about they can feel that there's a disconnect if you're not connected to yourself in your own heart. There's like this incongruence there, and it makes a man not trust you on a deep, sometimes like subconscious level. They're like, hey, well, what she's saying is not congruent with her vibe. That's the whole thing they're picking up on, is their level of tension, or your level of tension and your vibe. So if you're pretending to be super confident and cool and relaxed, but you're not really feeling that way deep down, there's this like disconnect. And it will, when you're at that place, a man cannot connect with you and he can't fall in love. But when you're like in your feminine energy, when you're in your body and being authentic, he can connect with you and fall in love that way. So yeah, really important to not pretend to be someone you're not. I
Yeah,
totally
and
agree.
and and so there's kind of a argument in the dating space, right? There's this like thing where people are like, just be yourself, right?
I knew you
And
were gonna say
well,
that.
it's hard to like not talk about that, because it's so
Mm-hmm.
so important. Because it's like, it's really fascinating to me, like the argument. I get it. Usually when somebody's telling you to just be yourself, what they're saying is it's like this pick me up thing, right? It's like just go in there and just be yourself, and he'll like you for who you are, and I think there's a lot of value to feel that way and to think that way. And I think at the same time, like there's so many different multifaceted aspects of ourselves, right? Like if you go on a date with a guy and now I know that I'm going off on a rant here, but if you go on a date with a guy and he is acting like a jerk, right? He might not get that second date with you, right? Or if he's, just really, really grumpy, like I was a little bit earlier. If he shows up and he's really grumpy, he might not get that second date with you. And that's not to say that he isn't a really awesome guy, right? And that maybe you guys might be really awesome together. What it is to say is that we have different aspects of ourself, right? And sometimes if we go out on a date and we're just trying to just be ourselves, and at the time we're there's something weird going on with us or whatever, it might be a really negative experience when you want it to be a really positive experience, right? It could be really boring when you want it to be really fun and interesting. And so I think that there's like a very, very valid thing when somebody says just be yourself. It's like, yeah, I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel like I'm a cool and awesome person and that people like me for who I am. And I think from a like connecting with a man from your heart and being an authentic human being, like I think that's very important. Is this whole like not pretending like you're someone you're not. And I also think that on the other side of that, there's this thing where we're kind of in this one of the biggest challenges that we are having right now as a society is that um, when we go on dates, men and women, both of us, what we do is we expect the best, right? But we aren't willing to live up to those expectations ourselves, right? So we believe that we deserve something like the best person in the world, but we aren't willing to put in the effort to be that person that deserves this amazing person to come into our lives, right? And so I think that uh, you know, being authentic is really, really powerful. And I think also growing and developing ourselves is really, really powerful as well. It's like, uh, nobody tells you, if you're like, hey, I want to go and, and lose some weight, right? Like, no nutrition expert, no person that is an expert in helping people lose weight is going to be like, oh, well, just go be yourself, right? If you go to a gym and you talk to a personal trainer, and you're like, yeah, I want to learn how to work out and be stronger. No personal trainer is ever going to be like, oh, just go into the gym and just be yourself, right? Because you have to learn things, right? You have to learn how the equipment works. You have to learn how your body works. You have to learn how food impacts you, right? And it's kind of the same thing in relationships. There's this aspect of us of being authentic and connecting with ourselves and connecting with another human being from that place of being authentic. But there's also kind of this skill thing that's involved in relationships where we need to learn about each other, right? We need to learn how to connect with ourselves and other people in ways that take things deeper, and and sometimes you run into people and things just work, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you have to work on things, and in every relationship I've ever been in, and every relationship I've ever taught, there's like this thing where a lot of people try to pretend like they can just show up and things are going to be perfect in a relationship. Like, I'm going to come in and, it's this fairy tale thing and we're in love with each other and, things will be perfect forever. And usually when I talk to somebody and they're like, oh my God, my relationship is just so perfect and we're the perfect couple and everything's perfect and love and la da 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 da, I'm like, okay, cool, and like I'm just waiting because usually what ends up happening is in the next couple months. What ends up happening is there's this huge fight because a lot of times in relationships like that there's two different types of people. There's kind of these people that believe that relationships should just be perfect or they're not right. And then there's these people that believe that in order to have a great relationship, you have to work on it, right? And the people that tend to think that a relationship is perfect or it's not right are people that usually tend to have massive fights and horrible breakups. They're the people that are like, oh, everything's so perfect, and next thing you know, they're divorced. I know quite a few people that were like that in my life. And I think that a healthy perspective is this perspective of looking at things like this is something that we need to work on. We um, are a project to work on, to learn about each other, to learn about ourselves, to grow together, to grow in general. Um, oh yeah, I'm just off on tangents over here.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, some of the best relationships that I've seen have had problems because then it's like that's how you work on things and grow together, and it's not this like surface level thing where there's a lot going on under the surface and it's not being talked about. So I totally agree with that. And it's
Yeah.
all, and a lot of times people say, oh, because I talk a lot about feminine energy in a lot of my work and videos and stuff like that. And people A lot of people really like that, but some people think it's like pretending, like, well, I'm not naturally that way, so that would be pretending or playing games, where nothing we talk about is like a game or like a superficial strategy, because there is this whole other side of you. A lot of time I work mostly with women. There is this whole other side that's just like waiting to be uncovered. So it's about being more of who you are, not pretending to be a certain way that where it doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to that whole like feminine energy thing real quickly because we do get a lot of comments about that, and it's interesting. Like everybody's like both men and women. I get this with. For those of you who don't know, I used to be a men's dating coach, and a lot of guys are kind of resistant to this whole like being a man thing, right? And which is understandable in our society for a lot of reasons, and I could talk about that for hours. But like if you want to attract a masculine guy, you need to connect with your feminine energy, and it's not like this thing where like I'm telling you that you need to go and pretend like you're someone you're not. From like I don't know that much about feminine energy because I'm a kind of somewhat of a masculine dude, and I have some feminine traits to me or whatever. But um, for the most part, I do know about masculine, right? Being in my masculine, and for me, like being in my masculine when I'm being a man, it just feels so good. It just feels so. It feels just right. And there was a time when it didn't, and it was because I was trying to like live up to these fake societal standards that existed, and I didn't understand masculinity. I didn't understand being a man, and I think there was like this like this weird belief system that was in my head when I was growing up that was like masculinity is bad or something, and I've totally gotten over that, and I love being masculine now. But my guess is that there's something similar in being feminine. Like it's this primal. Like for me, it's like this primal thing where I get into it, and it's like, I just feel at home. I feel alive, in ways that I don't feel if I'm like trying to be feminine or um, uh, trying to be somewhere neutral or something like that. When I get into my my primal masculine kind of archetype, or whatever that is, that when I'm being masculine that I get into, it just feels so good, which is another reason why when you're talking to a man and you say things that show that he's being masculine, like he loves it. Guys love that kind of stuff, because it's talking to this deep internal primal part of him where where it's just this powerful thing that that he looks up to, and he from like a deep inner space just loves, even if he hasn't spent that much time in it, or he hasn't really explored it or discovered it or whatever. I think that with most men, there's kind of this, like this masculine thing that a lot of us have lost because it's in many ways it's not necessary in our current society. If you're in the United States, and in most places in the United States, there's definitely some places where like danger exists and things are, you need to kind of be in your masculine when you're out there if you're a man, to survive or whatever. All right, I'm going off on tangents again, Helena.
No, I totally, yeah, no, like you were saying, where something doesn't feel right when you're not in your masculine. Same with, well, I guess I could speak personally. Yeah, if I'm not letting myself feel something, it's like the worst. It's almost like an out of body experience. That happened to me yesterday. I was really feeling really, really depressed yesterday, which I don't experience all that much these days. And I was like driving around, running errands, like holding back like tears is kind of embarrassing to share, but I think it might it might be helpful. Like just on the verge of tears, like all day long. And I don't know, you guys could let me know, type it into the chat if you've ever like just been like blinking back tears all day, and you just like finally let yourself cry and like feel it, then you're done. And in like 5-10 minutes, then you feel like yourself again and you get through it, and then that's it. But it's that holding back of not letting yourself feel what you're feeling that causes this disconnect a lot of times.
All right. Cool.
Oh, the screen just froze. Can you see me still? Something
Yeah,
just
I
happened.
can I can see
Okay, there
you.
we go.
What screen froze?
No, your screen froze for a second, but
My
I think
screen
it's fine
froze.
now. Yeah.
Um
No,
okay.
you're good now.
All right, so I just want to say hi to some of these people talking to us in chat. So, Loria, hi.
Mhm.
Hi, go on. So, Miracle Love, hey. Tennille says, I get it. Julie says, why does a man play cat and mouse games with you? We can talk about that later. But when you conform to them, you lose yourself. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
Tennille was saying that there's definitely that's kind of a that's a I'm not sure if we're going to be talking about that or not. No, we aren't. But there is this thing where a lot of times I hear from women like they'll say things like I gave my everything to this
Hmm.
relationship. And he ended up taking me for granted, or he ended up losing interest. And I think that there's definitely there's kind of this noble thing where a lot of women are like, yeah, I gave my all to this relationship. I'm giving myself completely to this relationship. And usually the problem in there is that you're smothering a guy, right? And so when you smother a guy like that, his natural reaction is to pull back. And if you continue moving forward, he'll just keep moving backwards. So that's I'm not sure if that completely answered that, but
Yeah. That's a really common thing. Over functioning, over giving. I always say anger and resentment build in direct proportion to the amount of effort and energy you're putting out as a woman. So if you're trying to do all these things and give to a guy to try to get something back from him in the relationship, like get him to step up and commit or something like that, if he doesn't behave the way that you're hoping he would, you're going to feel angry and resentful. So when you start to feel that way, you can always ask yourself, where am I putting in too much effort? Where am I hoping that this man is going to do something? Where do I have an expectation that's not being met? And you can rein it back in that way.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We could talk about that for a long time as well. So let's go on to the next one. So here's the number three thing that makes a guy lose interest is trying to be his mom, right? And I hear Helena laughing about this, and it's funny in some ways, but there's this thing we were talking about Alison Armstrong earlier. One of the things that she says is that women uh, treat men like they're just hairy women. Like men should act like women, but they but they're just like misbehaving. You know what I mean? Like they're these misbehaving women or something, just hairy. Um, and this whole thing of like acting like a guy's mom. Usually, what comes out in this is like trying to make his decisions for him, trying to train him into, being this like finely groomed chihuahua that, your pet that you keep with you. And there's nothing attractive about doing any of that. There's nothing attractive about mothering a man. There's this feminine element that is incredibly attractive, which is like being nurturing. Um, but there's kind of this over the top element of like being mothering and being like, you shouldn't do that. And, let me, you should start behaving this way. And uh, do you have
Yeah,
anything?
totally. Yeah, men don't want to romance their mothers, right? Or their teachers. A lot of clients I have go into this teachering mode or mothering mode or even like a counselor mode, kind of telling a man how he should behave or what a a good man in a relationship should do this and this and this, and it just like turns a man off faster than almost anything else I found.
Yeah, it's pretty kind of destructive for a relationship long term, especially, and that kind of moves us into this number four. Number four, I like doing that. Number four is treating him like a slave, right? And so, what I'm talking about when I say that you're treating him like a slave is doing things like trying to order your guy around, berating him, mocking him, making him abandon his own passions or something, taking him for granted, right? Uh, and this is okay if your guy is like, I'm friends with this guy who's super feminine, right? And his wife is like this, like, she's like this alpha female, right? And she like is like, it's you should see it. It's hysterical. Like it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it like to me it's like the most god awful relationship in the world. You know what I mean? As a guy, I would never ever want to be treated the way that she treats him. She's just constantly like, you need to be back here, at this time, and you need to, do this, and stop hanging out with those people, which is kind of the mothering thing as well. But she kind of like puts him down, and it's just really, really painful for me to watch. He kind of likes it. Maybe he's just into emotional abuse. I don't know. There's some people that are into that kind of thing. But for most guys, it's not attractive at all. Mocking a guy, making fun of him. There's this kind of like playful banter thing that you can do with a guy, and that can be attractive in small parts, right? Well, what I've noticed is that a lot of women end up going like full mode into this, and it's like a guy can't even open up to that woman without being like berated and mocked and like made fun of and told he's stupid or something. And if you've gone that far, it's kind of like this masculine thing, and it's um, for most guys, it's just really, really unattractive. And if you're an attractive woman, like physically, what will end up happening to you is you'll end up being in lots of casual relationships. You'll end up thinking that guys don't want anything long term. You'll think that guys don't want to get serious at all. It's kind of interesting talking to women that. I don't do a lot of coaching anymore, but back when I used to do coaching, it's like the transformation that a woman can go through when she goes from being like this, like masculine, berating, like tell a guy what to do all the time type of a woman, and like into her feminine, and the difference that she experiences with men who all of a sudden are like into her, like asking her for marriage, like, it's funny because there's like these women out there who are like, and I'll see this in my comment section, especially on our Facebook page. It is you'll see a bunch of comments of these women that are like, men don't want anything serious. Men don't want, aren't looking for a commitment. Men just want one thing, and it's sex. And then you go over and you see these other women that are commenting, and they're like in these, I mean, it's like every guy I meet, wants to get married to me. Every guy I meet wants a committed relationship with me. And a big difference between that is feminine energy. And we, we keep talking about feminine energy.
What did I tell you right before we started this?
Yeah,
No, but
yeah.
just a woman like that, the tiniest little shift in this other direction that we're talking about can get you the biggest, most incredible results. Just the tiniest little shift into your feminine energy. If you tend to be that type A kind of driven sort of person that wants to tell everyone around you what to do, just the smallest shift I always want to say lean back, but if you can just lean back just a little bit and start to see the kind of results you'll get. I mean, we've seen comments even just in the past couple days where people are like, "I've gotten the most incredible results, even just a day of doing this." It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, so this is number five, is thing that is really unattractive is I put it as being too easy, but really it's not even really saying that being easy is a turnoff, but uh, it's like so there's a couple different elements to this, right? One is like being um, like too sexually aggressive, which can be fun for a guy, like short term, or if he's like kind of a submissive in the bedroom or whatever. But the other side of this is um, uh, you know, uh, like being too easy for for him, right? Like just kind of being a doormat or just like doing whatever he wants. This is a problem. Like there's this thing called boundaries, right? And nobody really wants to talk about it, but it's like one of the most important things that you can do in your dating and relationship life is have boundaries because it makes a man feel that you're really valuable, right? And the more valuable a man feels that you are, the more special he feels that you are. And so if you are just like letting him do whatever he wants to do, especially initially, he will lose. He might come on hot, but then he'll end up losing interest. And it's one of the things I talk about in my programs is that uh, men commit because of investment, right? So the more a man invests in you, right? A lot of women like to call this chasing, right? I like to call it pursuing. But the more a man invests in you, the more he'll feel like he doesn't want to let you go, right? So it's like if you ever look at this is probably a guy topic. I don't know. If you look at stocks, for instance, right? A lot of people, what they'll do is there's been a whole bunch of research on this. People will like do a whole bunch of like research into stocks, right? And they'll be like, okay, and they'll find a stock that they really, really, really believe in, and then they'll put all their money into this stock, right? And it might do well or whatever, but at some point it starts going down, and it might go down a lot, right? And what ends up happening is that a lot of times these people end up losing all of their money because they have so much invested in the research that they've done on this stock, and they were so certain about it that they're willing to write it all the way down to the bottom because they're like, no, I picked instead of doing smart things with stocks, which is selling at a certain price, they just write it to the bottom and they end up losing all their money. And this is gonna sound really bad, like transitioning it over to men, but like a man will, if he invests a lot in you, not just like monetarily, but like emotionally, physically, from a time standpoint, the more he invests in you, the less he'll want to lose you, right? The less he'll want to let you go. And so, if you give a man everything without making sure that he's putting effort into this potential relationship that you have, then it won't feel like a big deal if he leaves you, right? He won't feel like he's that invested. He won't feel like you're that valuable to him. And because of that, he won't feel like you're that special woman that he's always been looking for. Um,
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I'm reading the chat here. Yeah, Candace said pretending you're okay with something casual when you really want a relationship. Yeah, definitely. It goes right along with that. Um, I totally agree. I think you said it all there. That was great.
Cool. Hey, if you're just joining our chat, make sure you say hi. We like it when people say hi to us. If you're new to our channel, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get more videos on how to have the relationship you've always wanted. So next thing that we're going to talk about is this is number 6 is of 8. Just in case you just got here and you don't know we're doing 8 here. So 8 things that make men lose interest, these are things that are unattractive, things that make a guy pull away, things that make a guy lose interest. And so this other thing is kind of it's gossiping about him too much, right? So there's this kind of thing where there's this loyalty thing around men, right? Like men want loyal women, right? If I was to lump all men together, which we tend to do in a lot of this stuff, men want loyal women. And so it's like if you're talking about a man to other people, talking about him in a positive light is can be really beneficial. Because when he talks to other people, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I heard so many cool things about you." And if you talk badly about him behind his back, he'll probably find that out, and it'll destroy your relationship. But there's this other thing, which is kind of talking a lot about him, right? And to a guy, it makes him like, if a guy figures out that you're talking about him a lot to other people, even if it's your own friends, your best friends, right? And he talks to them and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know this one thing." And they say this one thing that's like personal and private to you. A guy will start to like lose trust in you, right? He'll feel like he suddenly can't be as open with you and tell you all these things that he wants to tell you because it'll feel like you're because he becomes afraid of what you might end up telling people, which could end up ruining his reputation, and he might end up seeing it as like being manipulative or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell a lot of times I just tell my clients just if you can try to avoid talking about the guy you're dating or your boyfriend when you're with your friends, just because you can get into like complaining, and that gets in your energy, and it creates this like negative thing around your relationship. And also I love what you said too, like men need to feel like they can safely open up to you, and when they feel like they can trust you and confide in you and tell you things that they don't necessarily tell everybody else or anyone else in their life, that's what makes them feel like this is the one woman I can't live without. So it's really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so moving on. Let's see if we. Oh, hey, hi,
Aw.
Easter pastels. Um,
Rose said, thanks for the important tips on how to handle ourselves, be yourself, room for improvement. Oh, these comments are great.
hey, love your
Um,
channel. I recently found y'all and love your content. Thank you.
oh,
We love you guys too.
it's so great to
Really
connect
the
with you.
best part of our channel is really you guys. Like
Yeah.
all you women out there that are a part of it, who help each other out, who ask us questions, who, um, uh, are growing. There's nothing more rewarding to me than seeing a woman go from being in a space where she feels like she's stuck to being in a space where all of a sudden all these amazing things are happening
Mhm.
to her with men. It's just so like it's just so rewarding. It's really really powerful, and so yeah, thank you for being here. And being a part of our channel. So yeah, if you're new to the live stream, make sure you say hi. We love it. We love it when you guys say hi. So okay, moving on to the next one. Number 7. So we've got 2 more. So number 7 is being too hot and cold, and so this there's this like viral video out there, right, that talks about like a woman's attractiveness to crazy scale, right? And it's the
I
funniest.
saw that. I
Yeah,
saw
it's kind of people share.
that.
I've seen it. Like I've had people send it to me multiple times, and it's over years, over a few years. I've had people send it to me multiple times, and this is really what people are talking about on the crazy scale, right? Is this like being too hot and cold? Like a man. So men have most men have kind of they have a limited amount of. So there's this book out there. It's called The Way of the Superior Man, and it's by a guy named David Data. And one of the things that he talks about in that book, and I found this to be incredibly true, is that men are like on this path, right? Like they have this thing that they're going for. If a man is a mature masculine man, he is on a path going somewhere in his life. And they kind of describe this masculine energy as kind of this dull, forward, like darkness, like and they describe feminine energy as like this light, this beauty, this flowing, this dancing. I'm like giving my feminine thing right now. And for a man who like runs into feminine energy, it can be this really alluring kind of distraction almost, right? And it can be really really powerful for him to kind of join forces together and them to like come together and because she'll kind of pull him off this path and give him these fun detours of experiencing life, right? Like I've heard feminine energy be described as like uh, the experience of life, right? And masculine energy is kind of this cold hard uh, thing that is just this forward driving force, this really powerful forward driving force. um, so some women out there take this to the extreme, right? And they go like hot, cold, and maybe you've even experienced guys doing some of this before, but it's usually for a guy, it's like distracted, like distracted path, whereas for women in their feminine, it's like this kind of like flowing like all over the place. At least from a guy's perspective, when he sees it, he's like seeing this like woman go from these different polarizations, and it's really kind of confusing for a man. It can be interesting initially, but if it goes like way too far, what ends up happening is he feels like it's just like this weird, confusing, like annoying sometimes if he's getting pulled too much off of his path, like to the point where he can't even focus anymore. He can't even like go back onto his path because he's being so distracted by this feminine energy that is sporadic and kind of just all over the place. It can be really detrimental to the potential relationship that they have. And a guy will immediately throw a woman into like, this woman is crazy, wild, and fun, but not relationship material category very, very quickly if he experiences too much of this. Um, do you have anything to say about this,
I've
Elena?
never I've never heard anyone put it that way before. So I was just listening. No, I think that was totally brilliant. I mean, especially if you're being hot and cold as like a game or a strategy to try to make a man to manipulate the way he feels about you or try to get him to behave in a certain way. A lot of times a man won't, he might not be able to tell what you're doing, but if he can tell you're doing something, he can tell you're doing something to affect him in some way that will cause him to want to like stay at a distance and not come too close. I found.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Um, yeah, it'll keep him at a distance.
Yeah, Julie says, "Why does a man play cat and mice games with you?" That's kind of like the other side of it when the man is hot and cold or when he's trying to do something to affect you.
Yeah, it depends, you know.
Yeah.
There's kind of, we could probably do an entire video on just on that,
Yeah.
right? So for a man, it could be like a conscious thing that he's doing, and it could also be like completely subconscious, like he's not aware that he's even doing it, right? Because I've actually had women accuse me of doing that in the past. And usually when they're saying that to me, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like they've made up in their mind like this whole scenario that's going on. I'm playing games with them, I'm doing all these things. And really, at the time, I think what was going on with me was that I was really just conflicted, right? I had kind of this thing where I wanted to like date this woman, but at the same time, I was kind of it wasn't my priority, and so it would come up. It was like, yeah, I want these emotional connections. I want this woman. I want love. I want sex. I want all these things, and at the same time, I'm like, I've got this business that I'm working on, or this job that I'm doing that's really important to me, or another thing that happens sometimes with guys is that they're just not that interested, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so you come up in his mind, and then he contacts you, and then um, he forgets about you because it's not like this, uh, because you haven't become that important to him yet, and so he like just kind of forgets about it, and then gets distracted on things that to him are a higher priority at the time. And there's also scenarios where guys intentionally play games, right? So if a guy is consciously doing it, that's a huge red flag. Um, but it's kind of I've never dated a guy before, so I don't know how to say like this is a game. I know that in dating women, I've had suspicions that women were playing games with me, but it's hard to ever pinpoint whether they're doing it consciously or
Hmm.
whether it's not. Because it's like, okay, well, if you ask them, they're probably going to deny it, you know, because it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I've been playing games with you, like, who's going to admit to that? Maybe some people. But for the most part, it's difficult to determine whether it's conscious or not. And if it's not conscious, then it's just a matter of priorities. And the question isn't um, whether he's playing games or not, but whether he's in a space to make you a priority, or in a or open at all to having a relationship as a priority in his life. If he's not, because some men aren't. There's God, I'm going back to Allison Armstrong again. So Allison Armstrong has this book. It's a great book. You should go pick it up. It's called The Keys to the Kingdom, right? And it talks about men and these stages that men go through in their lives, right? And there's like, I think she calls it like the, I can't remember what the young one is. It's like, and then there's like a prince, and then like a king. I don't know. There's a bunch of stages. I don't, I'm just gonna, make this sound ridiculous if I try to say what they are. But there's different stages that men go through, right? And there's like the stage where a man is like on this adventure, right? And um, to have a woman with him, if he's still in this kind of immature adventure stage, he needs a woman that isn't going to try to tie him down, right? He needs a woman that is willing to go on this adventure with him, right? And then there's this next stage where a guy is like building his kingdom, right? And I might be skipping a stage, I don't know. But there's a stage where he's like really, really like focused on work. And usually there's two types of men in that category. One is like this man who isn't going to commit to any woman because he's not ready yet. He doesn't feel like he can be in a relationship without having, part of his kingdom built already, right? And then there's another type of man who is willing to bring a woman along as long as she is in like this supportive role or kind of like in alignment with his growth as a man, into building his kingdom and supporting him in building his kingdom. And then there's other stages. There's like this stage where a guy's like totally over all of that, and he's like, I think they call him like the king or something, and he like is like uh, focused on like giving back and helping other people and all kinds of other things. But anyway, it's a good book. Go read it. The Keys to the Kingdom, Alison Armstrong. Great book. Um, I was, am I, am I going on a tangent again?
No, no, I can see why you like that one. So I think, yeah, that's great. Totally right on. A lot of times, like women will ask me like, why is a man doing this? Is he playing games? Why? And it's like there's, like you said, it's hard to know the why, and you can't often change the why. So it's, I would sort of, I always recommend like not placing meaning on every little thing a man says or does. Just focus on what he's doing, effort in. Is he making you a priority? Is he pursuing you or not? And how are you feeling when you're with him? Rather than getting up in your head, analyzing, trying to figure out why a man is doing every little thing that he does. So if you can try to not place so much meaning on every move a man makes, that will help you a lot. That'll help keep you out of that masculine energy analyzing place.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
eh, eh, so are we on 8? Is that what
Yes.
we're on? All right,
Uh-huh.
we're on the final one here. We're on the final. We're on the final countdown. So we're on number 8, and number 8, and this is if if you got lost in my ranting, these are things that make a guy lose interest, pull away, are unattractive to a guy, especially long term. And if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe. I'm gonna say that like 12 times in every video from now on. All right, and so the last one, number 8, is being desperate, right? And so a desperate woman is like the way that a man feels around a desperate woman. And when I'm talking about desperate, I'm talking about like a woman who's like just like any man will do type of woman, right? And this is like you can tell she's almost on a hunt, right? Just to get a guy. And it's like, oh, you're great, like you go out on a date with her and she's like, oh, you seem so wonderful, and you're like, you don't know anything about me yet, and it's like, oh no, but I know that you're great, and you're just like, okay, this is weird. Um, but the way that a man feels when he ends up like around like a really desperate woman is he feels like he's being used, and he feels like he's being used for some kind of placeholder in her life, right? Like she so needs this guy to be her boyfriend, her husband, her fiance, her provider, her whatever, that she's so desperate about having, that it's not about him, right? He doesn't feel like she cares about him. She feels like he's she's just using him to be whatever position she needs him to be, which temporarily some guys can find attractive, but like I'm saying, over the long term, this pretty much, like if a guy gets into a relationship like this, which usually he won't, usually guys can smell and feel this a mile away, right? He'll feel it instantly when he's hanging out with you, because you'll start doing these things that to him feel really, really try hard. And if you do those things, he will be like, like he'll be sitting there looking at his watch. I guess we don't have watches anymore. Sitting there, checking the time on his phone, trying to figure out how quickly he can run out of the place. And so, yeah, desperation is hugely, hugely unattractive.
Yeah,
Oh,
the first thing that came, like, if she's looking to him to like fill a role, like there's this empty spot in her life, and she's just, the first good guy that comes along, she wants to throw him in there. So you can really ask yourself when you're looking at a man, or if you just like picture that man in front of you, are you looking at him as like holding something that you want, that you need to get from him, or do you really see him? Like, are you actually seeing him, getting to know him for who he is, or do you only see what you want from him? And men can do this too. Men can see a woman and just go, okay, she fits everything on my checklist, and and it's this. It feels there's a difference between when a man's energy is coming towards you, which is feels really good, and when he like needs from you. And that must be what a man might feel like when he comes across this like death in a woman. Like she wants something from me. She's looking to fill a role, and she's not really like seeing who I am. That's sort of what I got from that.
yeah, and moving kind of back to this whole thing of being desperate and acting desperate, right? It kind of goes back to that whole thing where we're talking about chasing and pursuing, right? A guy needs to feel invested. He needs to feel like he's going after something. He needs to feel like he's winning something, right?
Yeah.
And if you show up and you're like, I'm already won, you're the most amazing man I've ever met. What I mean? He doesn't feel like any of those things are happening, right? He doesn't feel like he's winning somebody. He doesn't feel like he's with somebody who's valuable, right? He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel like he wants to pursue or chase or invest in or put effort in, because he doesn't need to. He can sit back and the woman will chase him, which happens a lot. And it's just not attractive, especially long term. Like short term, what ends up happening is that you'll end up sleeping with a guy, and the guy will end up, disappearing on you, and the cycle continues. The cycle continues. So, yeah. So yellow. Rosa says yellow. Am I yellow? Is that what's going on here? Do I look yellow to you, Helena?
I
Do I
don't
look
think
like
so.
I'm yellow
I
to you?
don't, I don't think she's. I don't think she's saying
I
that to
don't
you.
know
I
what
don't.
yellow
I don't think
means.
so. I don't know.
Pilot Judgment says hi,
I'm reading
Helena.
some of these. Oh, the sound just cut out really quick. Can you still hear me?
I can hear
Or the
you.
screen froze. I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Screen froze.
Okay, no, it's back now.
Is
It's
it
back.
back?
Yeah.
Are we having technical difficulties?
No, I think it's okay. Are you reading these comments? Are there any questions that you want to? I'm just looking through them really quick.
Laugh out loud. So we can be. I can talk about it. He's cool with it. I'm not sure what she's saying. Okay, so oh yeah, we just hit the hour time limit. So let's just cut it where it's at right now. I just want to thank
Okay.
everybody for being here. Thanks so much. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe. And thanks, Helena, for your valuable input in this conversation. I don't think I'm yellow, but maybe I am. Um, anyway, thank you everybody for being here.